Inside Boxing Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Daily is brought to you by BetNow.eu. So make sure you check out BetNow.eu, where you can get a 50% cash back bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000 by using the promo code TRUTH50. Once again, BetNow.eu, TRUTH50 gives you 50% cash. So if you put $1,000 in, you get $1,500. If you're like Jeremiah and me, you put in 50, you get 75. Also brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation with Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos. Make sure you go check them out on Facebook. I am your co-host for Inside Boxing Daily, Mike Goodpaster. And right now I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser. Do you like that dramatic pause, Jeremiah?
Yeah. I thought I was going to get like J-Joe or something stupid coming my way, but
hey, that's just your name. There's no reason to think it's stupid.
Damn it, I don't live in Kentucky any longer, okay? So I shouldn't be subject to those sort of nicknames.
Okay. Yeah, I live close to Kentucky. You don't want to be subject to anything that has anything to do with Kentucky. For anybody out there in Kentucky just listening to the show, I'm just surprised there's internet there. All right, guys, we're going to start off talking a little boxing news. The top news today, English boxing star Dillian Whyte, who just recently beat Oscar Rivas, has reportedly tested positive to a banned substance. Does that matter to you, Jeremiah? I mean, we don't know what the banned substance is yet. The thing that bothers me here, or makes me think maybe it's not that big a deal, is the British Boxing Board of Control allowed the fight to progress even though he tested positive.
Yeah, well, they had to, though. I mean, I know it sounds a bit odd, you know, saying like, well, he tests positive for a banned substance, why would you let a fight go on? But the thing is, you know, we have to understand is that it was the A sample. We don't have the B sample, so we don't know what exactly it could have been. I mean, see, the thing about it is this positive test was caught by UKAD. So it's the British Boxing Board of Control that did this along with VADA. And there are a number of things that are over the counter that could set this stuff off. I mean, you saw with Billy Joe Saunders. I mean, he claimed that it was, some over the counter stuff. It's hard to believe somebody like Billy Joe because he looks like a guy who walks around as a fat ass in between fights, and he looks like one of those guys who would be using substances to cut down to 160 because he's not keeping it together. Dillian Whyte, on the other hand, he has tested positive before, so there's some initial suspicion that arises, with this breaking news. But it's also a fact that he was at 257 pounds and was heavier than usual. So it wouldn't seem as if he's using PEDs. But then again, this is why, the BBBC let the fight go on because the parties were contacted, but again, it's only the A sample. So if the B sample checks out and it shows that he's clean, and so if they had scrapped the fight altogether, but his B sample had come back clean, you never know. Maybe Dillian Whyte has a reason to sue them then because, right, I mean, he's losing out on a payday then. So we still have to wait and see what the B sample says. It would be funny, though. I have to admit, it will be funny if Dillian Whyte tested positive for PEDs, all while he's sitting there bashing guys like Anthony Joshua and all these other guys, calling Anthony Joshua the juice man, and he probably is, but, he's calling Anthony Joshua the juice man, and he's on the juice himself.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's start off talking about Oscar Rivas against the juicer, Dillian Whyte. 15-round unanimous decision, 115-112 by two guys, 116-111 by the third judge. What was your take on Dillian Whyte's performance and Oscar Rivas? Because I know that you thought Oscar Rivas may be the next Sunday listing.
Yeah, I was hoping there. I thought he was going to dominate the heavyweight division for the next decade. I mean, I did think Rivas had a chance to pull off the upset. I know John did as well, and he did end up dropping Dillian Whyte, but he
didn't. Because I said Oscar Rivas sucked.
Yeah, but you think all heavyweights suck, so
because they do.
But you also,
Did you watch him?
But you also agree that pretty much all these heavyweights are a knockout waiting to happen. The thing about it is Dillian Whyte did show some boxing skill. I mean, he pretty much just stuck behind the jab the whole night. He just jabbed and moved and got the job done. I mean, Oscar Rivas really looked like he was devoid of answers in there. I mean, he would jab occasionally. He was moving his head all right. I mean, I got to give him that because it seems like whenever Dillian Whyte unloaded with his power shots, Rivas he had enough guile, and slyness to move and duck and bob and weave. But when he was coming at him, he just wasn't creative. He would throw single jabs. He was loading up on his shots too much, and just like Rivas saw with Dillian Whyte also saw with Oscar Rivas, and he was able to move out of the way of the shots. The punch that caught him was actually a bit sneaky, where he hit him with that right uppercut and hurt him and dropped him. So it was a change from what he had been doing the whole time. But yeah, Rivas was just plodding forward. He was devoid of ideas, and I got to give it to Whyte, because Whyte is typically a guy who likes to engage somebody. He likes to get in there. He's a bit scrappy, and you saw a little bit of that in the beginning where he was loading up with some of his shots, but. I think he just realized that, what he was doing was working and there was no use for him, especially after the knockdown. He just realized there was no use for him to put himself in danger's way. Got the job done, man. I mean, it was a pretty good performance. I mean, Rivas was, I think number 10 in the ranking. So it's a solid performance, and maybe I'm off here, but overall, it seems like Dillian Whyte's resume is probably better than Deontay Wilders at this point.
Wouldn't take much, would
it? No, it wouldn't. It sure as hell wouldn't.
I wish John Einrenhofer was on here so we could argue.
Yeah, where you at, John?
No.
Yeah, no, I mean, it
John
would be, but
is
that's
the one
the
that said that Dillian Whyte wouldn't last 3 rounds with Deontay Wilder, which is absolutely ridiculous to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a possibility, because of Wilder's power. But like we talked about, before, it's, Chris Arreola went, 8 rounds? Spilka went, 9 rounds? I mean, there are tons of lesser guys who've gone far more than 3 rounds. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Dillian Whyte beat Deontay Wilder. And I think it would be nice to see it made, because Dillian Whyte would actually be a credible threat compared to what he's fought in the past. I mean, we're talking about Deontay Wilder, and he's faced what? He's faced Tyson Fury, who's obviously
And he lost to.
Yeah, exactly. Who he should have lost to, and then he fought Stavern. Yeah, he fought
shit. I mean, he just beats a bunch of shit. Now,
yeah, well, so
let's go ahead and talk about a bunch of shit, which was David Price versus David Allen. David Allen just wasn't big enough to deal with David Price, but it was impressive that David Price could stand up for half an hour.
Yeah, I think I don't even think his mother thought that was going to happen. It's funny because when you were listening to the British commentary, they pretty much kept saying the same thing. They're like, if you would have told me that, because the conventional wisdom was David Allen would catch him late or Price would catch him early. And the fact that we were watching David Price going into the late rounds, clearly outboxing him, and it just wasn't getting any easier for Allen, it surprised all of us, and kudos to Price. I mean, because honestly, I look at Price and I'm like, there is a guy with talent there. I mean, his jab. I mean, you can see, where the hype was. I mean, as I mentioned in the past, even Dan Rafael, and again, I know Dan Rafael isn't that popular, but he gave him Prospect of the Year in, 2012 or something. I mean, there is talent there. I mean, his jab is sharp. It's quick. He brings it back to his face. He's got a sneaky good uppercut. His hands are pretty quick for a big man. But he's obviously got a lot of flaws. But David Allen, to me, and again, this is what the commentators were saying, and they were spot on. You could just see that David Allen was not anywhere near the world level. I mean, we saw that when Luis Ortiz beat him. But yeah, when David Price is outboxing you pretty clearly, because I was watching the fight and I was looking at David Allen and he was trying a number of the same things that Alexander Povetkin tried, like the overhand right and stuff, but he just wasn't creative at all. I mean, he kept doing the same thing over and over and over. He kept trying that overhand right, but he wasn't setting it up. Like Povetkin will throw a left hook to the body and throw a right hand over the top, or he'll feint you, or he'll throw a jab or something. Allen just kept boring in and trying the same move, and it just, Price doesn't have great defense. Sometimes he'll just cover up and it's a bad move. But against Allen, he just smothered his work and then got back to the jab and beat him handily. Good for Price, though.
All right. Yeah, I like David Price. He just can't take a punch. Next up, Arthur Spilka. Did you pick Spilka to beat Cesare?
No.
Are you sure?
I don't think so.
Are you positive?
I don't know. I think I did.
Yeah, I think you did too. But he didn't win. Derek Chisora knocked him out in the second round, and it was a devastating knockout. I mean, Chisora looked good.
Oh man, that knockout was vicious. Jesus, man. I mean, it's it's a typical heavyweight fight in the beginning where a lot of they're standing there posing and posturing, but it's hard not to like Chisora. I mean, because he's not always entertaining in terms of personality. I remember he made that when he was fighting Dillian Whyte the second time, and he made that stupid joke. I mean, he's not the best shit talker, He made that stupid joke against Dillian Whyte when they had that what is it, the British version of Face Off, and he's like, "You're like a toilet, I'm gonna flush you," or some stupid shit.
That was so funny.
He's not always
I can't believe you didn't see the humor in that.
No, I thought it was dumb,
Yeah,
but it was one of those things where he's not quick with his tongue, but whenever you put him in the ring and he actually shows up in shape, I mean, he's given a lot of fans a lot of entertainment value over the years, and it's like where do you go from here? I mean, you don't give him to Dillian Whyte again. There's really no use to that. He got starched in the second fight. I mean, Joseph Parker's probably going to get somebody a bit better at this juncture. I wouldn't mind if they put him against Alexander Povetkin. I mean, I think it was I'm not sure that would happen, but I just think you give him somebody who's going to just a fun fight. I mean, Chisora can punch. He's fun. He's tough. Just give us more entertainment value. He looks like he's going to keep trucking on, and more power to him, man. It was a vicious, vicious knockout.
Yeah, and he's not an easy fight for anybody because he's got that power and he's a tough guy. So anybody he fights, he has a legitimate puncher's chance.
Oh yeah, especially in the heavyweight division. I mean, with his, with his will and I don't know. I'm trying to think of who would provide a stiff test for him at this point, and it's kind of tough to say. I mean, maybe you give him Joe Joyce, but I'm not sure that would happen. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I think Chisora would starch Joe Joyce.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't bother me.
I think he would fell him. All right, next up, let's go to the pay-per-view card. Juan Carlos Payano gets stopped in 9 rounds by Luis Neary. Were you impressed with Neary's performance or less than impressed?
I liked it, actually. I mean, from the outset, I was kind of going along with what the commentators were saying because they said, hey, Payano's, he's pretty busy here. They mentioned how he's typically a stiffer test against southpaws than he is orthodox fighters, and I think that's true because I saw Payano against Warren. He was a tough guy, good amateur background, good hand speed, not a big hit or anything, but technically he's pretty solid. He understands lateral movement. So to me, it looked as if he was doing pretty well in the early rounds. And I thought, when we were coming up on about round 4, I was thinking, hey, maybe Luis Neary. All these times he had been draining weight and missing weight have finally caught up to him. And then there seemed to be a change, right? I think it was round 5, maybe it was round 6, but I think it was round 5 when Neary started opening up a little bit more. He wasn't doing it consistently, but it seemed like whenever he opened up, he started connecting, and you could see that he was bothering Piatto a little bit. And then he progressively got more aggressive, let his hands move a bit more. And I like the performance because I think he recognized that Piatto is pretty tough against lefties. took his time in there, didn't bother. Maybe he needed the rounds too, because he's been knocking guys out as well. But yeah, he was just methodical in there. He took too many punches for my liking, but a lot of them weren't clean blows. I mean, I just didn't like the way he was going about his defense at times. He would just put his gloves up, block things, and then just retaliate. And I don't like that. I like when a guy shows more nuance, where he's moving his head or he's parrying or whatever it may be. But he got the job done. I was impressed, and I still think he's the most credible threat to Inoue out there. I know a lot of people after that were like, nah, Inoue blows him away. Well, I'm not exactly convinced that Neary approaches him the same way. I think Neary is probably quite a bit more aggressive in that instance. And again, I'm not calling it a 50-50 fight, but if you compare him to Tate and Burnett, Neary's a legitimate puncher. He's a real big bantamweight. He's still probably juicing to make the weight limit. But I think that's a good fight. I still roll with the line that he's the biggest threat to Inoue.
Oh, I think there's no doubt he is. Real quick, we got a couple questions from Hamed, who missed the start of the show. Hamed, what's more important in this show? And Hamed's question is about the positive test by Dillian Whyte. And he says, I've seen conspiracies, but are WBC and Heyman protecting Wilder? He has had several opponents and future opponents test positive: Povetkin, Ortiz, White, and, as Hamed so poetically puts it, the other Polish guy. What do you think? Is there a possibility of conspiracy here?
Jesus, man, doesn't it seem like it? I mean, it seems like whenever Deontay Wilder's lined up for something stiff, it's, something happens. I don't know what the hell's going on there. And, I'm not sure if they were just drugging guys until they finally got Anthony Joshua or what exactly was happening. But listen, honestly, it's boxing, and it sounds like black helicopter shit, but nothing in this sport should surprise anybody. I mean, we've heard stories from boxers, I think, on this show where, on our Boxing Legends show, where they're talking about how people, it's like football sometimes, where they're the hotel setup. I think I even might have saw it on Asian Boxing, where that Nakatani, who fought Teofimo Lopez, was complaining about some of the stuff that happened, about how he got changed with his hotels a couple times, and I don't know, maybe people were like some hippie band was outside banging on pots and pans, and in synchronization they were screaming hey, and they just did that all night long, to keep a guy up. But I've heard stories like that where odd things happen and guys are kept up all night in an effort to to mess them up come fight time. But it does seem a bit odd that it keeps happening. But I'm not going to jump on the black helicopter stuff yet, just because this is heavyweight boxing, and honestly, I just think most of these top guys are doing it. I mean, I just think they're all probably on it. Of course, it would be a bit odd for Dillian Whyte to be on it after talking so much shit about Anthony Joshua and others, but we have to wait and see what his B sample says. I'm not going to crucify the guy yet. Again, I need to see what the B sample says. And again, we've seen this with, over-the-counter stuff can trigger positive test. I just want to wait until I have all the evidence.
Part 2 of Hamed's question. It is unusual that VADA didn't report the positive test of White, but UCAD and WBC swept it under the carpet until after the fight, when the test was from July the 17th.
No, I thought about that myself too. It's like, why did VADA not catch him, but UCAD did? I mean, but again, I don't know. It's all in the details. I mean, I don't know if maybe UCAD did the last test. Maybe he ingested something right before the fight and UCAD did the last test. Again, that's my problem, is it would be pretty damn odd if VADA, didn't catch it and the tests were overlapping and somehow VADA missed it. That would be some suspicious stuff, but I just don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if UCAD did the last test and, they were the ones who found it. I just don't know, honestly.
Well, I wish our PBS shill was to answer the question.
Yeah, that would be nice. But again, I just want to have all the details before I start crucifying a guy. Again,
I wouldn't crucify him because I think this. I think it's very possible that sometimes They'll lie about a test just to make somebody look bad, if you know what I mean.
Well, and I mean, it would be hard for me to crucify him just because I think all these other guys are doing it anyways. I mean, I don't think, in fact, I think the top guys are being protected. I mean, yeah, Anthony Joshua looks like a fucking science experiment. I mean, Vladimir Klitschko's fighting in, past 40 and he still looks pretty good.
Canelo
I mean,
Alvarez, he tested positive and it was okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he gets rewarded with potential $365 million payday. I mean, listen, unless you're doing 24/7, 365 random testing and good testing, again, we have to keep this in mind. A lot of people constantly say, well, VADA's doing the test or so-and-so's doing the test. It doesn't matter all the time. VADA themselves have put out statements saying, don't pay attention to the fact that we're just doing tests. You have to pay attention to what's contracted in, because they will contract certain types of tests, and that allows guys to get around them. I mean, you look at the VADA catch rate and you think only 10% or 3% of these guys are doing it. I sure as hell don't. So I want all the information before I really start freaking out and, calling Dillian Whyte a cheater. I don't know. Again, we have had times, of course, even if Dillian Whyte's B sample comes back clean, even then we still don't know that he's not on something. I mean, these chemists and drug guys are so creative nowadays that I've heard Memo Heredia say that he can, even if you have a dirty A sample, he can make it to where you have a clean B sample. So it's very scientific. It's tough to tease out the details. I'm not crucifying him yet, but we'll wait and see.
All right, for the IBF World Super Middleweight title, Caleb planted Mike Lee in 3 rounds the way we thought he would. Anything to say about this, or do we even care?
I really don't. I mean, this fight really meant very little. I mean, it was just a showcase fight for Caleb Plant, whatever. I don't care. Maybe because it was 2 white guys, it helped bolster the ratings or something. I don't know, but it really didn't prove anything. But we did say on the show that Plant needed to go out there and get him out early because the discrepancy in talent was too great. He did the job. I got to give him that.
All right, then we got Yordenis Ugas with a unanimous 12-round decision over Omar Figueroa Jr., which I think is what we expected too. Ugas is just better than Figueroa, who has never gotten any better.
Yep, and I was happy. I mean, I said before the fight that I predicted Ugas by decision, but I was hoping for a stoppage, and it seemed as if it was kind of getting near that line. The later the fight went, and then Ugas kind of stepped off the gas, and he was like, "Well, I've got this thing in the bag, so I'm not gonna bother putting too much more punishment on him." But I was happy to see it. I mean, Omar Figueroa. He looks chubby at 147. He doesn't belong there. He never has. I mean, his boring in style, that might work when you're naturally bigger than guys, but Ugas just kept timing it. He kept pounding him with uppercuts, kept keeping him at distance with jabs. I mean, it was a wash. I mean, I didn't see anything. Figueroa might have won a single round. I don't know. I can't remember one him winning, but Ugas dominated. I mean, it was just such a clear victory, and I was happy to see it. I mean, Omar Figueroa needed a reality check. I mean, this is a guy who hasn't taken the sport too seriously. Ugas has. I mean, Ugas has gotten better since I first saw him. I mean, I think, when he fought Jamal James, and beat James, I mean, he looks like a guy who's continuously gotten better, in my opinion. He also has a strong amateur background. He's got good size. I mean, he's not a big hitter, but he hits well. I mean, technically he's good. He's not sloppy. I was happy to see it. I don't like Omar Figueroa. Nothing against him personally. Again, he just hasn't shown a dedication to the sport. And after I watched him arguably get outboxed by Jerry Belmonte, I just haven't liked him. So good for Ugas. I'm just hoping he gets a good test after this.
All right, next up in the main event, Keith Thurman talked the talk. Manny Pacquiao walked the walk at the age of 40, shutting down the 30-year-old undefeated former welterweight champion in front of a sellout crowd, and I don't know how big a pay-per-view audience, but I know I bought it, and Manny Pacquiao looked really good. We both sat here and thought that Keith Thurman would win. We both had a little bit of money on him. But in the end, even though I was losing money, I wasn't that upset about it because what Manny Pacquiao did was special Saturday night.
No doubt about it, man. I mean, what else can you say? But the guy is a bona fide legend. I mean, this is the problem is, you have all these guys and, in boxing with the Mayweather and Pacquiao crowd, there's a lot of in-group, out-group things going on. And I don't care what side of the aisle you fall on or whether you don't like Pacquiao that much or, whatever it may be. If you don't like his opinion on gay people and that, just rubs you wrong and you're never going to like him because of it, that's fine. But you just can't ignore that the guy he's a legend, man. And you got to appreciate these guys for who they are. I mean, too many of us sit here, bickering about gossip. Like, we're sitting here gossiping about nonsense in the sport. And Pacquiao, even as a senator, even as a musician, he's a national icon in the Philippines. I mean, this guy's on billboards. He's a senator. He's incredibly generous with his wealth to the point where he lives way below his means because he's busy handing out $100 bills to people he doesn't know. I mean, the guy has really made a difference in his country. He's really made a difference in the sport. And it's just incredible to see a guy who started off at 106 pounds and at 40 years old, he's still beating guys like Keith Thurman. I mean, it was incredible, man. I mean, kudos to him. I tip my hat. I've always liked the guy ever since he upset. I think he was an underdog against Labwaba. I mean, if anybody has seen that fight, the way HBO was talking, I mean, Pacquiao was just kind of an unknown, and he'd already been stopped a couple of times. I mean, it's crazy, what being healthy can do for you. I mean, because he's getting stopped because he's weight drained early on, and now he's taking flush shots from full-fledged welterweights. But I was impressed with the performance. I mean, his defense, you can tell that he's way past his prime, but he's degenerated slowly, which is, really impressive in itself just because how small he was naturally and how old he is. But, he's always flickering out that right jab. He's always doing great things with that left hand, whether it's connecting, straight down the pipe or, that sneaky right hand that comes over the top of the left hand that he dropped Thurman with in the beginning, or the left hook to the body that he hurt Keith Thurman in the 10th round. I mean, it was just plain as day. That's where I differentiated. It was Keith Thurman did do a lot of good things in the fight. I thought was pretty close, but Pacquiao was clearly the harder puncher of the two. I mean, Thurman landed and I actually thought that Thurman had a smart game plan. I mean, he was throwing the jab pretty consistently. He was going to the body more than just about anybody I've ever seen, but he just wasn't digging. He landed a lot of good right hands. Thurman's problem to me was he just wasn't consistent in his posture. He was moving too much. He was giving ground to Pacquiao. I thought he should have just stayed aggressive the whole time and thrown his hands a bit more. And to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure that Keith Thurman is the same guy that we saw against Sean Porter or Danny Garcia. I'm not quite sure he's the same guy, but given that, he's still a damn good welterweight. And to see, Manny Pacquiao beat him the way he did, it's just impressive, man. I mean, he deserves – I would love to see him sail off into the sunset after this. I don't think it's going to happen. I'd love to see him just take a money fight and then get out of here. I mean, he's not obligated to fight Spence or Crawford or either one of those guys, honestly. I mean, he's earned his keep. He can do what he likes, and I wouldn't even be pissed off if he fought Mayweather a second time. I don't care at this point. I mean, there's no expectation for me. It's just he's gonna cash out. He's gonna be good.
Well, the thing that's impressive is though that a year or two ago, we were sitting there talking about how he should never get in a ring with an Errol Spence or a Terence Crawford. And now that doesn't seem as big a mismatch as it once did.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. It's funny because for a lot of people, Errol Spence seems to be on a higher plane than Keith Thurman is, and I'm just not sure of it yet. I mean, I think this is why we need to worry about achievement over the eye test. Because it's in this game, it's so easy to say, well, this guy looks good. I mean, we saw it with Teofimo Lopez, right? I mean, we're talking about how Lopez is probably the most credible threat to Vasil Lomachenko. And now we're like, well, hell, I don't even know if he beats Richard Comey. I mean, yeah, and all of a sudden I think the defense against Luke Campbell doesn't look that terrible against Vasil Lomachenko now, just because we saw Luke Campbell in against Jorge Linares, and he was competitive. But this is the thing is, a lot of us are going on the eye test, and a lot of times it just doesn't prove to be true. Errol Spence needs to prove that he is an elite level welterweight. I mean, that's the thing is, since 2016, ever since Manny Pacquiao lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr., he's beat Timothy Bradley, who is arguably number 2. He's beaten Jesse Vargas, who is a top 10 guy. He beat Lucas Matisse, who's old, but was a top 10 guy not long ago. He's also beaten, Chris Algieri, who's a good fighter, knocked him down like 5 times.
Yeah, Adrian Broner.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point. This is what I think we need to emphasize is he's putting the work in. I mean, it's all good and well to see Errol Spence beat, Kell Brook, who got his butt whipped by Gennady Golovkin, and see him outbox, Mikey Garcia, who doesn't look like he belongs at 147. But I mean, who are you gonna favor? I mean, I think that Manny Pacquiao at 147 would beat Mikey Garcia too, and it's arguable that an old Manny Pacquiao beat Adrian Broner better than Mikey Garcia did. Okay, so I mean, we're just not talking about a huge difference there. So I mean, Errol Spence to me he has to prove it. I'm not convinced yet.
Yeah, he's done nothing even over the last 3 years comparable to Manny Pacquiao, just with Pacquiao's win over Thurman. So,
yeah, he beat Kell Brook, and it was a damn good win. I give him that, but he's really resting his resume.
He didn't dominate Kell Brook, at least not
exactly.
the first half of that fight. That was a close fight.
Right, exactly. I mean, it was a nip and tuck affair until later in the rounds, and Spence started breaking them down. And this is my thing is, everybody gets caught up in the pound for pound stuff with Mikey Garcia. They're like, oh, well, Errol Spence beat a pound for pound guy, but he's not a pound for pound guy at 147. He's not. He's a pound for pound guy at 135. He's clearly not at 147. I mean, there are a good number of guys that I would favor.
A pound for pound guy.
Yeah, I mean, does Mikey Garcia beat Regis Prograis or Josh Taylor? Again, I'm not convinced of these things. And this goes all back to what we say time and time again. The proof has to be in the pudding. And I do want to say that Keith Thurman deserves a lot of credit too, because he was, building up the fight and he was talking a lot, but he showed that he was a tough guy. I mean, because some people were saying, hey, he's just coming back for the paycheck. I think that he showed he wasn't there just for the paycheck. I mean, in round 10, and I talked about this on Facebook today, in round 10, when Manny Pacquiao hit him with that left hook to the body, he took his mouth. He almost hunched over and took a knee, but he didn't. He fought it. He took his mouthpiece. I don't know. Have you ever seen anything like that where he takes his mouthpiece out to get more air and then just fights with it in his hand? I can't.
Well, I'll tell you this. It's very, very rare that you see a man take a body shot like that and even continue to fight.
Exactly. I mean, it's because today is the anniversary of Arturo Gatti versus Leonard Duran, and anybody who watched that fight knows the left hook that Gatti landed against Duran, and he was done. All it took was the one left hook. He was finished. I mean, Gatti was exceptionally tough, and he took that left hook to the body from Mickey Ward. It ended up going down. He ended up getting up, but I mean, it's uncommon for a guy to get hit with something like that and not go down. I mean, the guy showed a lot of heart. I mean, he was hurt in the first round, got knocked down, got up and fought. I mean, even when he was hurt in round 10, he had the incredible awareness to pull out his mouthpiece, and then he started fighting back. After he was circling for a little bit and throwing a few uppercuts, he landed a nice left hook, landed a good right hand after that. I mean, I got to give a lot of credit to Keith Thurman because he's shown some toughness, and I actually wouldn't mind seeing a rematch. I know a lot of people haven't talked about it, but I wouldn't mind watching a rematch there.
Me neither. Let's go ahead and move on. We're going to talk about WBO featherweight champion Oscar Valdez, who has been ordered by the World Boxing Organization to defend against number 1 contender Shakur Stevenson in his next fight. Now, this is a fight that should be fairly easy to make, given that both guys are with top rank. I know Valdez, at least I think Valdez would probably rather have a Warrington or a Frampton fight. But what's your take on this one? Is this a little soon for Stevenson, or do you think it's the right time?
I don't think it's too soon for Stevenson. I mean, I don't think so. And again, I'm pretty wary of saying I don't think so because to me, Stevenson looks very good. Of course, is he very good? I think we need to pump the brakes on pump the brakes on some of this stuff. Like putting the cart before the horse is the saying. We really need to be careful of this stuff. I think Stevenson is ready for that level. To me, Oscar Valdez he's a good fighter and he's one of the best featherweights in the world. I think, like you said, he would prefer somebody like Warrington. Stevenson to him. I mean, if you're Oscar Valdez and you're weighing your options, it's like, why do I got to fight Stevenson, a tall guy, southpaw, defensively sound? If you're Valdez and you're more of a, you're kind of a boxer. I don't want to call him a boxer puncher, but he fights in that style where he can box a little bit, but he can fight a little bit as well. And up until recently, he's looked like he likes to fight a bit more. So yeah, I can understand his reasoning. It's for him, he wants somebody who's a bit more well known, somebody who's going to give him a bigger paycheck, a fight that's easier and stylistically. I see his reasoning. I really do. And if I was Valdez, I would want that too. I mean, I would want to fight Warrington. Warrington seems like he's in a lot of guys' crosshairs because he just looks like he's the easiest pickings, because he's not a puncher. So, I mean, honestly, if Valdez were to get Warrington, I'd be okay with that too. I mean, Warrington is certainly more proven than Shakur Stevenson. And in that, even if Stevenson looks as if he's better than Josh Warrington, even if somebody wants to make that leap, I would rather see Valdez versus Warrington first because Warrington and Valdez are both more proven. If the Stevenson fight gets made, I'm perfectly okay with that too. I think Stevenson can hang with Valdez right now, and I'd probably favor Stevenson. It's a good fight either way. Warrington and Valdez, though, is just funner.
We have a comment from Alberto who says, I think Shakur is a monster at 126, so I'll stick with my pick of Stevenson to beat him. I think the pressure style that Valdez has and the fact that he gets hit so much is what makes it a bad fight for him.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. I do. I think that's why he's a bit weary of taking the fight. And I've actually seen some comments. I don't know if it was from his dad or from somebody at his management team, and they were saying that they're thinking about moving up to 130. So maybe if they force that fight, Valdez will just forget it and then move up to 130. And I don't like that. So again, I would much rather see him fight somebody like Josh Warrington. Again, it's a fun fight, but I agree with this guy, and I think it's a good assessment. Stevenson is a tough styles matchup for anybody. He's big, he's tall, he's defensively, he's tight. He's still got to learn the ropes a bit. You can see the inexperience there, but he's coming along pretty well, and I think he's going to be a top-notch featherweight here pretty damn soon. Again, that's me thinking. I don't know yet. But again, I understand Valdez's, reservations about taking this fight now. I would shoot for Warrington if I was him. But if he goes up to 130, I mean, I hate that stuff. I hate these junior/super divisions because it gives these guys outs, right? It's like if you feel a credible threat coming, from the same promotional body, you can just go to 130. And if he wanted to do that, he could do it, right? He could probably get Miguel Burchelt, and that would be a damn good fight too. But I would just wish these guys, this is why I wish there was one champion per division and fewer divisions, because you would be forced to have the best fight the best. And I really think that's what boxing needs. But instead, these guys are looking out for their own wallets.
Oh, hell. Check this out. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fights on August 10th against Everett Bravo. Everett Bravo, I think that's Johnny Bravo's younger brother. But when you look at Bravo, he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. And he has lost to Alfredo Angulo, Junior Yonan. He lost to Sean Monahan. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's all you need.
This is the MO for Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And this is one time where if somebody says the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, they're wrong.
Yeah, well, this apple fell pretty damn far from the tree. I mean, Junior is nothing like his father, Senior. I mean, and I don't even mind this fight, honestly. I mean, he's kind of a non-entity at this point. Beating up on some guy who's lost 3 of his last 4. It's just not a big deal to me. I mean, again, this guy shouldn't be fighting for any belts ever. I mean, unless it's some stupid made-up WBC trinket for some holiday. I don't care. I mean, Chavez Jr. is never going to be a top-level guy, ever. I mean, he had his chance at 160. He beat Andy Lee. It was a good win. But outside of that, yeah, it's just there's nothing to worry about. In fact, with Chavez Jr., all you should really be focusing on is putting him in a fun fight. If he beats some guy who loses Sean Manahan, put him against Alfredo Angulo or somebody like that at 160, 168.
They've talked about
I wouldn't mind. Bring Antonio Margarito at a retirement. I mean,
right.
He's just a non-entity.
A bunch of comments about Chavez Jr. if you want to hear them.
Oh, God, please.
All right.
I'm sure they're as positive as we are.
This is from Doc. If he needs a job, this bitch should be shoveling shit at the prisons. He has no business inside the ring. And then we have Robert, who calls himself the Truth. What? Did he already go through his millions and he needs more money now? You made your bed. Now go back to sucking your mom's tit. Then we have young Wheezy, who says, let's hope the bum Smith stops talking about the ex-junior welterweight and decides to fight 168-pound Chavez Jr. would be a good start. I have no idea what that means. And then Dave says, this pendejo has no shame. Go back to your Superman underwear and your bowl of cereal, cunt. So it sounds like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has a lot of fans here. And then we have Joe, who says it seems like every month this dude's name is on the boxing schedule, but he never shows up. The cunt. Let's see. Then we have Tim, who says, please, 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 go the F away. The boxing guy says, who cares? This kid has always sucked. Ricardo says, I can't imagine who's going to make his name over his scalp. Make my day, people. Retain a solid reputation. This cunt's a bitch. He's just a famous spoiled kid.
Well, I mean, none of these
here
guys
we
are
go.
wrong.
Here we go. 101 says, Mexico's cleanest athlete, Chavez Jr. Take a bow, son. You're the only one that hasn't ate tainted meat yet.
Ouch. Man, these comments are vicious. Hey, thanks everybody for chiming in. I mean, yeah.
And they were quick. All you had to do was say Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. This is from all the people that bought the pay-per-view when he fought Canelo, probably.
Yeah, they want their money back, and I mean, can you blame them? I mean, how can you blame any of them? I mean, honestly, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. probably feels in a similar manner as these guys do. I mean, because Chavez Jr. has been piggybacking off his name forever. I mean, anybody who's been following Chavez Jr.'s career for a long time, do you remember when they had the pay-per-views when he was coming up the ranks?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when he was fighting guys like, who was it, Matt Vanda, like from the Northeast? He was fighting guys like Matt.
He fought far worse guys than Matt Vanda on pay-per-view. Because if you remember, I think like his first 20 fights were on pay-per-view.
Yeah, exactly. And they were charging him, cheap stuff. I think they were like $20, $30 to watch him fight. But yeah, he was
to watch him fight Matt Vanda, by the way.
No, it's true, but I'm just talking about relative to the other pay-per-view prices.
Quick, Victor wants to throw in. No one wants to see him. Retire, please. You cunt. So there you go.
Are all these guys listening in and just? I mean, I don't think I've heard cunt so much. Aside from
well,
the Australians.
You know why you haven't seen it? is because we haven't talked about Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. in a while. Hamed likes to say, I told you guys Pacquiao would win. I would like to tell Hamed I thought you wanted to be on the show Friday night. Then Hamed has another question, and he says, yes, Chavez Jr. is a cunt. No, he didn't say that, but I just figured I'd throw it in there. He says, who do you guys consider a better win? Not performance. Lomachenko over Rigo or Spence over Mikey Garcia?
Okay, so I got to go first. Well,
I guess I asked the question. Well, Hamed asked it, but then I re-asked it. So.
Okay, well, I think I probably favor Mikey Garcia at this point. I mean, I think he's younger. I think he's closer to his prime.
You mean Spence over
Again,
Garcia?
147. Yeah, right. I favor the Spence Garcia victory over the Lomachenko Rigondeaux fight. Again, just because Garcia is younger, he's closer to his prime than Rigondeaux is. Rigondeaux significantly older. They both came up from two weight divisions. But I think relatively Mikey Garcia was in a better place than Rigondeaux was. I mean, Rigondeaux still has shown that he's got something left post Lomachenko, but, we saw in his last fight he struggled a bit. He was getting hit more than, he was during his heyday. I just think Garcia is the better win right now. And I don't think there's a huge gap between them, but I'm going with the Spence win.
All right, Canelo Alvarez versus Sergey Deverenchenko is in negotiations. Are you excited about that, Jeremiah?
Dude, it ain't Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., so hell yeah. I mean, I think it's a good fight. I mean, because Deverenchenko he's arguably a top 5 middleweight. You look at his performance against Danny Jacobs. Yeah, I thought he
decision that some people thought he won.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Jacobs won clear enough, but he was competitive. I mean, he beat Jack Colkay, who's turned out to be a surprisingly good fighter, gave Demetrius Andrade a good fight. I mean, I like his style. And as I was talking about on Facebook, I think it was yesterday, I'd favor Golovkin. I would rather see Golovkin in a third fight because you and I both know that Golovkin brings out the dog in Canelo, and Canelo's willing to bite down on his mouthpiece and give us a more entertaining fight. I mean, I would rather not see another Daniel Jacobs performance, but I can't give Canelo Alvarez too much shit over that because Daniel Jacobs was the next highest ranked middleweight in the world, and Deverenchenko is arguably the next highest. So. And if you're talking about styles matchups as well, I mean, the reason why DAZN, people keep asking this question, and we need to understand that there's a business side to boxing. Demetrius Andrade does not put butts in the seats. That is exactly why DAZN doesn't want anything to do with a fight. I mean, a lot of us are talking about, a lot of fans, not me in particular, because I could give a shit about, these alphabet soup trinkets, honestly. But a lot of people are saying, hey, why doesn't he fight Andrade and then become the quote-unquote undisputed champion of the world? It doesn't matter for DAZN. DAZN is running a business. They need subscribers. They need people to tune in and pay money. I mean, this is on DAZN. They're potentially paying Canelo Alvarez $365 million. Granted, he keeps winning. So it behooves them to put on the best fights available. And this is why I've heard that DAZN is not going to approve the Deverenchenko fight unless Alvarez commits to a third fight with Gennady Golovkin, because they know that's arguably the biggest fight in the sport. It brings guys in. It's got international appeal, yada, yada, yada. So to me, if Sergey gets the fight, I think when you look at it stylistically, Sergey is the best option because he seems most likely to bring out the dog in Canelo Alvarez also because he's an aggressor himself. He's not too aggressive. He is technical so I think if anybody can bring out a fight in Canelo Alvarez, my second best bet after Golovkin is Deverenchenko. So I don't mind the fight at all. I think he's worthy. Fuck all that IBF nonsense. I don't care about that. I just think in terms of styles, he's a good matchup.
All right, Jeremiah. You got anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I would say that Also on that undercard, you don't really hear much about it because it ended so quickly, but Sergey Lipinets bashed I think his name was Insan, Jasar Insan or JR Insan.
Yeah.
Bashed him with a really nice left hook to finish the job. I know it was a substitute opponent, and so we can't make too much out of the win, but I like the way he went about it. John often talks about on the show about how he liked the direction Buddy McGirt was taking him and making him more into a boxer and trying to improve his footwork and whatnot. But it seems like whenever Sergey Lipinets fights aggressively, we got something fun on our hands, like we had with the Peterson fight. And I was happy to see it. So good for him. I just thought it was a good performance.
All right. Anything else before we wrap it up?
I don't think I've heard much in the works here lately. No, I think we're good.
All right, guys. So me and Jeremiah will be back tomorrow night at 11 o'clock. And our guest, of course, will be Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who will be here to answer all the questions that you guys had tonight. So make sure you
and all the comments. Yeah,
he'll
be replying to all of
questions. He's going to reply to all of them personally in Spanish and English. Yeah. So make sure you tune in for that tomorrow night at 11. Friday night, it looks like Hamed's going to be a guest. Even I think it's just because he wants to talk shit about Manny Pacquiao. So Hamed, we're not going to talk about Manny Pacquiao, and if you do, we're just going to hang up on you. I'm just kidding. Maybe we'll get William, our guest who's a moron, to come on and debate the merits of Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather with Hamed.
Yeah, there we go.
That'd be
got it set up.
Yeah, be an easy win for Hamed too. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I want to remind everybody you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where tonight we established that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is a cunt.